Through the Mayhem, the Sightly podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, brand safety, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to Sightly's podcast, Breaking Through the Mayhem. Very excited to welcome Jamie for episode 23 now. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. So Jamie Seltzer is the global EVP of CSA and MX Analytics at Havas Media. We know that our industry is no stranger to an acronym, but maybe you can help us break that down a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about what it means, your role, your team's role, and how that kind of fits within the broader Havas agency.
Yeah, absolutely. Gotta love a title that has two acronyms in it. So I'll break it down into two pieces. So CSA is our group within Havas that really focuses on consulting with clients around data analytics and technology. So we are sort of the consultancy that helps clients understand what their business challenges are and how they can solve them, leveraging different data pieces, different analytical techniques, different advanced models, or the implementation and running of MarTech and AdTech. So that's the CSA piece. And then the MX Analytics piece. So MX is media experiences. It's a core piece of how Havas engages with clients and makes sure that the media that we are bringing to consumers on behalf of our advertisers are meaningful and are driving better, meaningful media experiences. I focus on the analytics and the measurement piece of that, really kind of helping to make sure that we are being data-driven at the core of all of our media experiences that we put out there, and we are able to measure with rigor.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so thank you. That's a really helpful background. One of the things that struck me in our catch up before today in getting our I's dotted and our T's crossed for getting together to have this chat, which I'm really excited about, just in general, was how many parallels there were between how evolution of our space and the changes that we're seeing, and it feels like that's really picking up, but how that's impacting you, your team, your agency. And how many, again, like those common themes that we're feeling too on our side, even as a technology, data, media company, right? So I think it's really interesting that there's a lot of challenges that we're seeing, but also opportunity coming out of it. And it really does apply across the board wherever you sit in the industry. So I'm definitely excited to dig into that a little bit, explore that further with you and for our listeners to kind of hear, how is it affecting different people in different roles in different parts of our space? Because it's an exciting time, but it's also, not without its challenges of navigating a lot of different changes and what that all means.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was saying to somebody the other day that like in our business, and I think it's probably true for many businesses, but especially in ours, the only constant is change. And I think, every day there's a news story, there's something new comes out, whether it's a new piece of technology, or we're deprecating something, we're building something new, we've got new ways of measuring, there's limited tracking and greater tracking and context and all the things. But I think, it's constantly changing. But I think honestly, the way that agencies thrive is sort of in change and in evolving with the times, with the industry, and helping clients navigate through that. And part of that really goes to, especially in the area that I focus on in data and analytics and tech, it's how are we evolving our capabilities, our services, our products, and also our people to sort of meet those changing needs. So, if you think about analytics, when I started in sort of the analytics data strategy space, I'm not even going to name how many years that's been, a long time ago. It really was focused on primarily on reporting, and on reporting around pretty, especially in digital, like, counts of things, how many impressions, how many conversions, how many clicks. And it was really kind of focused on delivery of media and things like that. And as we've evolved, as the industry's evolved, and as we've evolved as agencies, we're spending so much more time thinking about the impact on business outcomes. And yes, delivery is obviously still important. We are a media agency. We want to deliver on media goals. But ultimately, how are media delivery goals tied to a client's actual business goals? How are we driving their business forward? And part of that goes beyond delivery. It goes into measuring business outcomes. It goes into measuring, the success of a client's business overall. And what is the impact, or now more often than not, talking about the incremental impact of, media and marketing to a client's business outcomes. So that's kind of the first, I feel like, evolution and kind of adjustment that we've changed and shifted in terms of, our responsibilities and our work with clients. But I also think that there's been a shift in our roles as well. And I would say, if you asked me 10 years ago, the amount of time I spent, talking to clients about legal things, as in data privacy, compliance, data security, was as great as it is now, I would not have believed you. I think that, for me, and so many people on our team and who do what we do, a core part of our job actually is now rooted in like legal foundations. What do you know? And both from a privacy regulation perspective, understanding regulations, especially for me in a global role, the regulations that exist in different countries and how we adhere to them and how we advise clients on how they balance driving results for their business with respect for laws, respect for consumer privacy. So it, very much thinking about the balance of what are the different regulations, but also what do consumers want? What do they want to see? We talked a minute ago about the media experience, part of my job, but the media experience is all about what is a good experience for consumers. And we have to do that while respecting the choices that they're making, not just what the government says we have to do, what any given government says we have to do, but what consumers want from us. How do they want to hear from an advertiser? What kind of personalization is acceptable to them, and things like that. So, it's really our roles as as sort of analytics professionals and data professionals in the industry has changed so much in the last 10, 15, 20 years, that it looks nothing like it did when I started.
Yeah, I think we're feeling a lot of those similar, like I said, parallels, even on our side, right? As a media data tech company, the definition of analytics has certainly evolved. To your point, reporting, not going away, always going to be a huge piece of what we do. But that was certainly very much at the core and center of all things analytics for Sightly, if you look back, 5, 6 years ago. But to your point now, it really is about how do you look across multiple data sources? How do you incorporate those, use it to enrich data and to make bigger business decisions and more encompassing marketing decisions than, maybe paid media in a silo. So we're definitely feeling that shift too.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think even if you look at the world of like attribution, something, we went from when we were, a bunch of years ago when it was sort of before the digital heyday and everything was very traditional and TV and, linear TV and print and things like that. We looked at measurement really around market mix modeling, and then digital came in and everything was, the holy grail was like, can everything be attributed? And now we're sort of, the pendulum is swinging back to that sort of middle ground where, yes, we want to understand the contribution of different channels, of different tactics, of different partners and things like that to overall business success. But we need to do it through a combination of ways of methodologies. It's a combination of market mix modeling with some things like what we're doing, which we're calling, multi-incrementality modeling, and really kind of an attribution plus MMM where it's available. It's been a really interesting time to evolve and to push forward for our clients.
Yeah, I love what you said about the the idea, like, yes, we've always had to stay on top of regulation. We're feeling that too, for sure. Those things are changing more rapidly than ever as well. And maybe it used to be enough just to respect, what was mandated by law or government intervention. But to your point, now there's more control that consumers have too. And there's also a different level of expectation that says, like, yes, respect my wishes as far as how you track me, how you target me, and the type of experiences that you're creating. That consumers have so many options now for how they consume, that you really do need to respect those guardrails that they've chosen for themselves, let alone what is in place from a regulatory perspective. So we definitely feel that too. And to your point, that plays a much bigger role than ever, as far as, now we're in the mindset when we're thinking about partnerships or new data sources. Okay, like, what are your compliance regulations, right? How are you stacking up? What are the certifications? We need certifications that are very different than 6 years ago to make sure we're respecting any data that we're either collecting or leveraging, and using it, within the right parameters. So that concept is definitely one that resonates for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, I used to joke that, like, I feel like I could be a data protection officer at this point, and that was definitely not in the career trajectory if you had asked me 15 years ago.
Should we add a new acronym to the end of your
Yeah,
title?
exactly. We're gonna add DPO. I'm gonna pass my DPO
Yeah.
exam, and then we're gonna add DPO to
Perfect.
the
Perfect. I think that's just what your title is missing.
exactly. One more acronym.
Perfect. Yeah, okay. So I do actually want to, we talked about evolution of the space of your role. I do want to pinpoint, in a second, if there is one big change that you think is driving things. But before we do that, I also want to give our listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better.
Neat.
So we are going to, we're in the Thanksgiving spirit. We're all feeling it right now. So I think it would be fun to take a little quiz together. You on board? All right, perfect. So we are going to take a quiz. It's a BuzzFeed quiz. Our listeners can follow along. And it's going to take us through, you're going to choose 6 different favorite versions of your dessert types, along with a drink that you would most want to go along with it, right? Then we're going to crunch the numbers to statistically significant, complete accuracy. We're going to predict
Oh yeah.
what Thanksgiving food most aligns with your personality.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll sprinkle the questions throughout.
I feel like I'm back in high school again, taking quizzes.
That was my inspiration. The 90s magazine quiz for sure.
Exactly. Teen magazine.
There we go. So we will get those questions answered throughout our time together here. And at the end, we'll reveal the results. So, all right, we're going to start with, you're going to pick your favorite cake from these 6 options. You ready? Yeah. An M&M themed cake, vanilla and blackberry, wedding, which based on the picture is giving fig and maybe pistachio vibes. That changes anything for you. Caramel cake, a cherry cheesecake, or a mocha tiramisu style cake.
Interesting. So I will admit, I'm not a huge cake person. So this category probably wouldn't be the one that I chose.
You're going to have lots of other choices to make.
And yes, I have a feeling that there will be, I will have greater opinions in other categories, but I think, I don't know, I'm going to go M&M cake. It's fun. It's whimsical. I love M&Ms.
Perfect. I have to tell you, that would probably be my choice as well. Maybe
I didn't have an ice cream cake. So
sponsored.
normally my choice would be an ice cream cake because I'm not a huge cake person, and therefore
you're kind of like cheating. You're getting
that, yeah. So,
category.
but that's okay. I will go M&M cake.
Love it. Okay, we're gonna get Mars on the line and see if we can get a sponsored segment.
Sponsorship deal.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, great. So now that big important question is out of the way, we can move to our next area. So you had mentioned that your team's evolving, keeping up with the space. I love what you said about not just keeping up, because our industry can be really very heavily focused sometimes on risk mitigation, but there's also opportunity to be found in this. And I think you use the word thrive, right? How do we not only, as an agency, as a tech data company, like, how do you thrive in the change versus just sort of keep up with it. So with that in mind, I would love to understand, as your team has shifted, how should prospective clients or even existing clients think about the challenges, the type of business solutions and answers that your team can help them solve, and how can they best involve your team in that process?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I think a lot of clients they look at consultancies like CSA or others, and they in some ways like get overwhelmed. I mean, there was some stat, I think it was like 67% of CMOs are overwhelmed by the amount of data out there. And I think it's I think it can also be a little bit daunting, not just overwhelming in terms of the sheer volume of data, but like daunting in terms of what do we need to do? Where do we start? And also, I think clients can sometimes feel like, well, I'm not, maybe the most sophisticated client in terms of collecting first party data and doing all of these things. So like, should I really engage with a group that, really is focused around the use of data and the implementation of data and analytics? And I think the biggest thing that we try and talk to clients about is really, you know, figuring out what the journey looks like. And it also doesn't mean that you have to be expert you don't have to get to, number one most sophisticated in every single facet of the business, especially not on day one. I think, for us, when we talk to clients, it's very much about where are you now in terms of like, what data are you using? What data do you have? What analytics techniques are you using? Are you doing it yourself? Are you relying on third parties? What technology have you bought into and is it helping? Like take a step back and like level set of where are you? And then where do you want to get to? What kind of company, what kind of company do you aspire to be? And then it's up to us as the consultants to help you figure out how to get there. And I think, so for us, it's about being approachable in, and a partner with our clients in this journey. So it's, yes, of course, we have the capabilities to, implement a whole bunch of technology and run, incrementality models and run marketing mix models and do, greater, budget planning and growth analyses. But ultimately, it's about where does the client want to get to and how long do they want to take to get there? And then we put together a roadmap and we help them figure out what it is. And maybe that's an evaluation of their current marketing technology stack and figuring out redundancies, of which most clients have a lot of them, or gaps that are there that and maybe it's a lack of first party data, but a desire to be more connected with your consumer. So what is the strategy there? So it's about putting together that kind of strategic plan, and then for us, I think where we as an agent coming from an agency heritage and really kind of living and breathing the agency world, it's about then not just ending with a set of recommendations and saying, okay, cool, here, client, here are 10 recommendations. Good luck to you. But really being able to put that in place. And it's, working with, having deep relationships with all sorts of partners, having experience and credentials and certifications in a bunch of platforms, but really being able to kind of implement the recommendations that we put forward, iterate with clients over time. I mean, I think the reality is also having our media background, working with companies like Sightly and others for so long, we can then say, okay, you want to try this area. Let's put together a learning agenda. Even if we're not running the media for a client, because we've worked with clients who in-house their media, work with another media partner, just having that background and that connection to the industry, to the changes, to the media partners, to the technology partners, it allows us to put together and implement more actionable recommendations than I think, we often see with others. But, really it's helping clients navigate. It's not one size fits all. It's helping clients navigate the evolution for their business, no matter where they're starting, whether they're completely nascent and looking at foundational elements to improve their data strategy and their practice, or they're well on their way of their journey, but they feel like they may not be investing in the right places or in the right tools. So it's kind of that balance. But I think as a group within an agency that really kind of focuses on consulting with clients to solve the problems, that's how we really kind of help our clients solve and change and evolve over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's a really fair point that it's unrealistic to expect everyone to be an expert in everything, right? And to your point, it can be really intimidating to try to tackle all of that. So that's a great, starting point and a level set for teams that are working with you, brands that are working with you, to say, hey, it's okay not to know everything, but here's really where we have a gap, or we're struggling to answer these types of business questions, and to rely on your expertise to round that out and work with them. Like you said, iterate over time. That takes partnership, it takes collaboration, and sometimes it needs the time and a space to let that really grow into something amazing. So that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so it sounds like you are able to solve more problems than ever. And it's probably worth mentioning that now you can also solve more problems in more markets than ever too,
Yes.
right? And
Yes,
congratulations
yes.
on
Thank
your recent expansion. So what's the latest with your team? I know you guys have sort of gone global. So what does that look like for you now?
Yeah, thank you. So it's been really fun. I mean, so you talking 10 years ago, we had the capabilities to, run data analytics and technology in each of our markets, but they were really kind of limited to a local market, to local client kind of engagement. And it wasn't really a connected group. And then coming up on about 2 years ago, 18 months ago, give or take, we launched CSA as a global network brand. So we launched with 12 markets, which was really exciting, in like June 2023, which was super exciting because it really meant that we could bring all of the pockets of expertise within the organization together. They work together, they share ideas, they share, they also help, they each help each other kind of solve challenges and solve problems, and we learn from each other, and it's really more of a network and a community. And then over the last year, we have launched in 6 more markets, which is really exciting. The most recent being we launched in India and in the Middle East, based out of Dubai, in mid-October. So that was really exciting. It was actually, I got to go both places, which was personally very exciting, but also really, I think, eye-opening to me because, as somebody who's based in North America and spends most of my days working with, North America sort of clients in the Americas and clients in Europe, it was really interesting to go and understand the opportunities and the challenges in a completely different market, in a market like India, and in a market like in a region like the Middle East, and especially in the UAE, partly because there's so much differing not just differing technology, but ways of being. I mean, it's funny, when I was in India, there is a centralized government payment system, basically the equivalent of like a Venmo, but it is government backed, and we used it to buy like street market like bracelets and gifts for my kids and things like that. And it is there's no cash. There's like almost no cash at all. I mean, I think that we're generally cashless, but this is public sector. And it's, it doesn't matter what, you don't have to have, the bank account, you don't have to have the credit card and all the things. It's fascinating that the way that technology is used, and that opens up a lot of doors to how we can engage with consumers and what kinds of data is collected, and different thoughts around privacy and stuff like that. So it's just a really, for us, it's been really interesting and eye-opening for me personally, and also really great for us to be able to take learnings from other markets and kind of share them with, North America team or with the European teams, to think about how we can potentially, really expand some of the stuff that we're doing in different markets. So really excited to have launched multiple markets this year. We're up to 18 this year, and we're going to expand even further. I think we're going to do anywhere between 4 and 7 more markets next year in 2025.
Congratulations. That's a big deal. That's really exciting. Big expansion. And probably a lot, like you said, you can learn so much, both personally, like that's always amazing, but it does tip over, right? To see, okay, well, what do regulations look like here? What do the different ways of doing business look like here? And what does it look like overseas? And, that crossover that teams can learn and collaborate from each other really is interesting, and probably also helps us, maybe future proof a little bit in some instances too when it comes to what to expect as far as shifts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a lot of learnings in terms of, also, kind of this idea of optionality. I think, this idea of optionality and being able to, as as the industry changes, as the landscape changes, as regulations change, we need to have that flexibility and that agility to go into different partners, different tactics, different ways of working, and so I think having that breadth of scale across all of these different markets allows us to learn from markets where maybe certain things aren't allowed, or, we have a CSA in China where there are a lot of technologies that we use in the rest of the world that clients can't use in China. So how do we solve for those challenges there? So I think that's a really big piece of why we want to open up, these other markets, and also just scale for servicing global clients. It's important that we're able to offer consistency, in terms of methodology, in terms of, working with the same group in different places. It's really important for global clients to have that consistency. And so, that's part of, our excitement about being able to open up the CSA offices in different markets.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so we talked about evolution more broadly, and how that's impacting things. But if you had to pinpoint one big shift in our space, whether it's something that you think is kind of going to pop up surprisingly out of nowhere, or maybe something that we've already seen a little bit, get some trajectory, and maybe you think it's going to hit an inflection point soon, that's really going to have a big impact, whether it be on your team, Havas more broadly, companies like Sightly, or even your advertisers, your brands, whoever it might be. If you had to pick one thing, what would it be?
Oh God. I mean, I feel like the answer I should give is like AI. But but I think the answer I truly want to give is really about um like personalization, but like scaled personalization that is also compliant, or like I guess the way I'm thinking about it is like what we were talking about earlier, sort of results with respect, this idea that like personalizing content and experiences for consumers, but balancing what it is they want to see and balancing regulations. And a lot of that is it ties in with AI because a lot of that is enabled by AI. We're able to do those things faster. But to me, AI isn't a trend. To me, AI is an enabler of the things that that we want to put out in the world. And so for me, we've been talking about personalization for a long time, and it was always this, right message to the right person at the right time, blah blah blah. But and I think that was sort of that was the holy grail. That was the thing that everyone was striving for. And I would argue that we never really fully achieved it. And now with the changing in cookies and identity and stuff like that, I think it's about how do we personalize content, and personalized messaging for consumers, but it may not be one to one. And it may not be, it's going to be a balance. It's about finding that balance and that scale. Because one of the major issues with personalization previously is that, when you're doing one to one, there's not scale there. And it's pretty expensive. I mean, even with, AI and Gen AI and creative and all of that, it's still expensive to create all of those messages. So I think it's about finding that balance in personalization. I guess that's what it would be. It would be finding that balance in personalization where we're leveraging all the technology that's available to us. And that could be AI, things like machine learning and AI's ability to, identify audiences and identify relevant content, or even AI's ability to like create relevant messaging. But really, it's all in service of personalization for consumers, and at a scale that works for advertisers, and kind of evolving what personalization means. And I think that's kind of the balance there that I think is what I see sort of coming, that we're kind of getting to, is this balance, between how personalized do I need to be, and how personalized does a consumer want the messaging to be? How personalized can we afford it to be? And how do we do that with some sort of scale that makes it, advantageous for business?
Yeah, you sort of hit on that earlier too, this idea of the pendulum swinging and right how we started off. If we think back to probably both you and I kind of got started in the industry. Again, we won't get specific, but right, there was this idea of maybe very broad personas, maybe just kind of like a demo focus. Maybe, for me, I remember it really being all about splashy content sponsorships, right? And taking over the page and thinking that way. And then somewhere along the way, it swung very far over to audience targeting and only audience targeting and very hyper focused on cookies and how do you leverage that for that one-to-one personalization. So that really does make sense that you need to sort of settle somewhere in the middle where you can get the right message in front of a group, a cohort of like-minded people. And maybe you can do it in the places that are going to resonate. Maybe, content and is having a resurgence a little bit there because
Absolutely.
it's something to be said, right, for that message and where you are reaching consumers too. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we used to be in this thing where like, oh, well, if the person is in market for a car, then they don't, then you can hit them with a car message no matter where they are. They could be browsing, it could be browsing for holiday cards, and you're going to hit me with a message for a new car. I don't, I think that I think we've kind of, as you said, we've sort of been talking about this pendulum swinging. I think that yes, if I'm in the market for a new car, yes, I'm receptive to that message. Probably I have to be in the right frame of mind. I have to be in that right context. It doesn't mean that you only send it to me when I am, looking at a car and driver. I'm researching, but you know, am I really going to be receptive to it when I'm trying to bang out the holiday card that I'm late on and that I'm trying to, all of those things that I'm like trying to get this done, and am I really going to be receptive to a new car message? No, I think that there's some context. There's definitely a contextual element in there that we kind of forgot a little bit about or threw out the window a little bit when we were talking about super hyper personalization. But I think it goes back to that balance. It goes back to finding, the right time to put it in front, the right context to put it in front of the person, where they are receptive or where they're even looking. At a certain point, I know I use the holiday card example because I am currently trying to figure out holiday cards, and I can tell you that I am solely focused when I am on that web page of only trying to figure out my holiday card, and I have no interest in anything else that you want to show me.
Yeah, you said blinders are on, right?
Yeah. Got to get it done.
Yeah. I want to come back to that because I do, want to talk more about from a strategic perspective and planning perspective and where CSA gets involved and how you balance those factors. But for a second, I want to step back to this concept of like that pendulum swinging, changes happening. How do you think agencies like yours or people in the space in general can best prepare for whether it's that specific change or just in general stay more agile and more nimble to be ready for kind of whatever comes our way. You mentioned the idea of thriving in the change earlier. So how do we best set ourselves up for success to manage that and find opportunity in it?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, I think honestly, you kind of have to adopt this like sort of mindset of agility, and which is hard in big organizations, especially. Like it's not easy to be agile, but I think it's this mindset of agility, and also I would say, and I say this as a data and measurement person, we need learning agendas. We need to test and learn our way into things. It's important to also be flexible in that. Yes, there needs to be rigor around our testing plans. There needs to be, measurement and KPIs set up from the start and all of those things. But I think in order to be ready and, we talk about future proofing, and I don't think there's any way to like truly future proof because we don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going to come. We can guess, we have some ideas of the direction, but like things change all the time. And I think our industry is constantly evolving. And so I wouldn't say it's future proof, but I would say it's future ready. And part of that is, by agility and putting in place, learning agendas where we have questions that we want to answer, and we set up ways to do that. We set up methodologies, we set up tests, we test new partners, and then the other thing I would say is we don't just test them once. We test, we learn, we evolve, we iterate. Maybe something doesn't work right now, or maybe it doesn't work on a specific line of business, but it works on another line of business. I think we just, the thing that I try really hard to fight against is this idea that, oh, that didn't work for us once, we'll never do it again. I think that's something, partly because whatever that is, whatever the thing is we tried, I'm sure it has evolved over the last 6, 9 months, 12 months, 2 years. I mean, you have a platform that has been evolving. I saw it 3 months ago, and then I saw it a couple weeks ago, and then I saw it, 2 days ago, and it's evolved so much. And it's because, we're all kind of changing and adapting with that pace of change. And so I think it's important that we have these questions we want to answer. We set up rigorous learning agendas with measurement frameworks. We continue to test and learn and iterate, and we don't just write something off because maybe it didn't work once. We need to, keep trying them. I think that, that brings us back to this idea of, contextual. Well, people wrote off contextual for a long time, and it changed, it evolved, it iterated. So did the landscape, and now we're back. And I think it's important for us to think about that. That's, to me, how clients get ready. I mean, ultimately, it's that and thinking about where your business wants to go and putting together a roadmap and kind of really a true kind of, strategic plan. But also in that, it has to be flexible. We have to be able to change. We cannot be rigid because the industry won't let us.
Yeah. I love that distinction, future proof versus future ready. That's a really good way to think about it, right? Nothing's guaranteed. We can't predict the future. We're getting better at it. We're at Sightly, we talk about predictive analytics a lot more now than we did 3 years ago. I'm sure that's true for you guys too. But you can't get it exactly right every time. So the idea of being ready for the change versus knowing exactly what to expect. I love that. Okay, we've gotten to our second dessert category.
All right.
Okay, pick your favorite cookie. Chocolate chip, double chocolate, rainbow sprinkle, shortbread, Oreos, or white chocolate pecan.
Oh, goodness. It's either chocolate sprinkle or shortbread. I'm I don't know. I'm going chocolate I'm sorry. I'm going sprinkle.
Rainbow sprinkle?
Regular rainbow sprinkle. That's what it is. Rainbow sprinkle. No chocolate.
Okay, that's the answer.
They're also the most fun to make.
Yeah, and they're pretty.
Love it.
Awesome. Okay, great. So we talked about audience evolution of how we think about audience, how we think about targeting. And we've also talked about how technology has played an updated role in that. How do you think about tools that can best assist you in that process? I know at one point when we've chatted, we talked about, yes, there's finding the right audience, but then there's also finding this idea of white spaces and audiences that maybe you didn't consider before. Are there tools that can help you best navigate that? And are those tools that your team is hands-on keyboards with? Or are you part of the evaluation process when it comes to identifying what type of solutions can be most impactful for your team or for other Havas planning teams? And what are the criteria that help you sort of kind of manage through all the options that are available?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a balance. I mean, agencies create a ton of tools. We create a ton of tools, and we created and a lot of that is for internal working and to make sure that we're more efficient, and we're bringing, Havas has a platform called Converge, which brings in a bunch of data and allows us to find audiences and from syndicated data all the way through to kind of activation behavioral data, and So we have a ton of tools that we use as an agency on a regular basis. There's also partner tools that we partner with, that we white label, that we leverage. I know the teams use Sightly in the North America team to help support kind of audience creation, identification, and I think it's important for us to use sort of a breadth of tools, no matter what it is, whether it's around audience creation, whether it's around measurement. I think this idea of white space is really interesting because there's a lot of what my team spends time doing is trying to find that white space. And sometimes it's an audience white space. Sometimes it's an audience that we think, based on because the work that the CSA team does is focused primarily on kind of advanced in this space, sort of advanced data science and analytics and measurement. And so sometimes we'll get a client's, first party data list and be able to find audience and segmentation within that first party data. What is the lifetime value of those audiences, and how do we segment that list based on lifetime value, and find and identify other common attributes of those, high lifetime value audiences, and how do we find more people like that? So, part of that is about identifying and clustering. And then this white space idea, sometimes it has to do with audiences, and sometimes it has to do with, media placement, i.e., we don't want to be always in the same place that all of our advertisers don't always want to be in the same place that all of their competitors are. You kind of end up sometimes in a sea of same. So that we want to try and help find that white space. And that could be a new market, that could be a new channel, that could be a new partner or publisher, that could be a new audience. But it's about kind of using that analytical rigor to try and find a place where your message will break through in a different way, or in a new way, or reach a new audience. So I think there's definitely tools that we use, whether they are third-party tools or tools that we've built or methodologies that we've used to try and identify some of that white space. From a measurement perspective, we also use a ton of tools that we've created to look at we talked before about incremental value of media and marketing, and kind of going beyond basic reporting to really understand business impact. I mean, these are, all tools that we have in our arsenal as agencies. And I think, through our own proprietary stuff, through our partnership, with third parties, our goal is to synthesize all of this into a recommendation that makes sense for our clients, because ultimately that's why brands and advertisers hire agencies in the first place, is because is to bring a recommendation that is a synthesis of our own inherent knowledge, our own tools, our own data, partnership and partner information, rigorous analytics. All of that needs to come together to put forward a recommendation that we believe will drive business and will work for our clients to help them meet their goals. So, that's the kind of thing that we think about when we're, when we are using tools. And ultimately, a tool is sort of, it's only as good as its usage, as the data that's in it, as its utilization. I mean, you can have the best tool in the world, and we've seen this because adoption is really hard generally in terms of tool usage and rollout. You can have the tool with the best data in the world and the most rigorous analytics, but if people don't understand it, don't know how to use it, don't understand its value, or really just haven't adopted it, that's if it's not integrated into the process by which we come to these recommendations for clients, it just isn't going to get used. And so that's to me, it's almost less about the tool itself and more about how do we talk about the value and how do we integrate it into, the daily usage. That's what brings its value to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge factor for us that we're thinking about more than ever. Absolutely. You can have, to your point, the best tool that's out there, but if there's a perception or a truth to the fact that onboarding and ease of adoption just isn't there, you're only going to get so far. For us, we've seen that play out. One of our big value props and things that we believe is really important is navigating all of your, whether it's your audiences, whether it's content, whether it's culture. It's really important to navigate it through a brand's very specific perspective. And to do that, you need to know what your brand's perspective is. And that requires a little bit of upfront thinking, a little bit of game planning so that you can be consistent when you do go to market and make authentic decisions in how you want to message and market to your consumers. So we ask our clients to really give some thought in the form of our brand profile with that, right? And like, what does all that look like? So further downstream, you can make quick and consistent decisions. But that upfront work takes a little bit of time. And we've had to be sensitive to the fact that as a platform, our role is to either make our clients' jobs easier, faster, or with an enhanced output, right? Ideally, you do more than just one of those things. So you need to get past this idea that ease of use just isn't there. For us, that's where Gen AI comes in a lot.
Yeah, the Gen AI that you guys have inputted into your tool that helps fill in all of the information and just gives like people something to react to as opposed to having to start from scratch. Genius, because I can tell you that looking at a blank page and going, oh my God, I don't have time for this. Like, no.
It's sitting down in college to a paper that you haven't started yet.
Yeah. Daunting.
Yeah, exactly. So we're glad that it's resonating for people like you for sure. We heard it loud and clear, and you're right. I think that's been pretty game changing for how clients can work with us. So yeah, and I'm also happy that you and I have both hit on AI here a little bit because I'm pretty sure it's illegal at this point to have a.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an industry conversation these days without saying AI at least 5 times. I feel like we've hit it, but I don't know. It's probably a couple more times for good measure.
Yeah, I'm sure we could sprinkle it throughout, right? We can find a way. But exactly, it does, to your point, it's an enabler, not an outcome or a result. It's meant to make us all stronger at what we do. So it feels like it's playing that role right now, both for Sightly and for you guys as well. So I think we're doing it right.
I agree.
Okay, we are up to our third category. It's not my favorite category.
Drum roll.
Let's see. Okay, choose your favorite yogurt parfait.
Oh, interesting.
Right?
Yogurt parfait.
I
Dessert?
know. I think it's a reach, but we're gonna go with it.
All right.
Mixed berry, acai, mango, banana, blueberry, or peach.
I'm a traditionalist. I'm going mixed berry. Throw in a little granola, and then we'll get there.
Snack to hold you over till
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, perfect. All right. So that brings us to maybe we can kind of think a little bit now about you have your best tools. You have, those white spaces, maybe those audiences that you've identified. Now what? How do you help brands leverage their media spend, their resources to make the best decisions for maximizing the impact that they can have, right? What's the strategy for now going after these audiences? You sort of hit on this idea of the message at the right time. Maybe we're not nailing it just yet as an industry. How do you think about that?
I mean, it's interesting. So as part of I talked about MX media experiences before, and one of the core pieces of our media experience framework is something we call the 3 C's. And really that is around connection, content, and context. So connection is, are we finding the right people? And that could be loyalists, that could be white space, that could be, people who we didn't think would convert, but we're actually seeing in the data are converting more than the ones we did. So, the connection is all about, are we connecting to the right people? And then the next one is really about the content. And it's like, are we putting the right content in front of them? And that's, is it personalized enough? Is it too personalized? Is it, is the message right? And that's not just the copy. That's also the imagery. That's also, are they seeing themselves reflected in the advertising? Are they, is it kind of representative of them and their feelings and things like that. So it's, how does the message, it's all about the messaging, the sort of package that it comes in. And then the last piece is context. And it's like, are they in the right frame of mind? Are they in the right mindset? Are they in the right, we were talking about it earlier with the holiday cards, like, am I in the right mindset to see an advertisement for, a pair of shoes? Probably not. But like trying to figure out the right context. And that's also, it's become, we talked the pendulum again, like we're swinging back in that idea of context, that context is back, especially as, cookies go away, don't go away, start to go away, or mostly, I mean, at this point, they're already like between 30 and 50% gone. So, but context is so important. And it's, that's why we think about these sort of 3 C's: connection, content, and context holistically together. It's somewhat of an evolution of right message, right person, right time, but it's more, it's a little bit less about personalization and more about designing the right experience for a consumer, for a brand to have an impact. And that's, that's really how we're thinking about kind of maximizing that impact, or sort of making it count, as you were saying.
So for a little clarification, right, for listeners, like content versus context, because a lot of times in our space, when we say context, contextual targeting, we mean where the ad actually is, right? Like what the surrounding content is.
Yeah.
For you, that sounds like it's very frame of mind, which still
It can be. It's both. It's frame of mind, but it's also where it can also be, this is where we get a lot of like research on attention. It's like frame of mind, but it's also where on the page, what's the surrounding content, what does it look like? So mostly, it's funny when we talk about, usually we get the most confusion around content, because for us, content is about message.
That's the distinction I'm looking to make.
Yeah. So for us, content is about, like, when we think about the 3 C's: connection, content, context. Content is more about the message, the content that we're putting out there, the message we're putting out there.
Creative itself.
Exactly, the creative itself. The context is about frame of mind, but it's also about the context on the page. Is it relevant to the things around it? Is it somewhere that it's visible? Are people paying attention to it? We get into this discussion around kind of the attention, the sort of big debate about it around attention, which we feel, are people attentive to the message, to where it's being seen and how it's being seen? So that is the distinction between content and context. Content is the creative message. Context is where a consumer is seeing it and how they're thinking about it in the context of the overall website or page that they're on, or whatever that is.
Which makes a lot of sense, because you can learn a lot from the page context, right? I'm going to make sure I'm being clear. The page content will tell you a lot about the mindset or the context for the user. Like, to your point, if I'm in I'm down a rabbit hole searching for 10-minute recipes because I have to throw something together really quickly, it's probably not the time where I'm going to think about, oh, maybe I should take that vacation, or maybe it is the time that I'm going to be like,
I don't know. It might be. We might be like, oh, a vacation sounds right. Sounds good right
sounds
now.
better. But yeah, okay, that helps clarify it. Thank you. Great. Okay, cool. So the one thing I would, maybe throw out there, and we can come back to this if there's time, like the 3 C's. Feel like there might be some space to consider a 4th C, which would be culture, right? I think that kind of hits on, maybe that's overarching across all those C's, but we'll come back to it if we have time. But for now, we are going to choose our favorite donut.
Oh, I love donuts.
Okay.
Donuts are my happy place.
I'm right there with you. Okay, great. This is better than parfait. So we have vanilla cake donut, cinnamon sugar donut, chocolate frosted with sprinkles, strawberry frosted with sprinkles, maple bacon, and pistachio.
I know I tell my kids not to yuck somebody else's yum, but I can't do the strawberry. I think I'm going traditional. I am going to go cinnamon sugar because it makes me think of the apple cider donuts from when you go apple picking.
Yes.
And you always get those like warm apple cider donuts that are coated in cinnamon sugar. That's my jam.
Perfect. Yep, I completely agree. That's a great choice. I think that would probably, I'm doing a quick browse. Yep, that'd probably be my choice as well. So right there with you. Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna come back to the 3 C's for now, and then maybe talk about the fourth one. But so we know audience, ad placement, content, they're all factors, right? I guess in this case, we're talking specifically audience targeting versus contextual targeting, right? The surrounding content on the page. How do you balance those two factors? Is there a perfect weighting between those? Does it matter by vertical, by client, by outcome? How do you think about those two and sort of that pendulum swinging between the two?
I mean, everything differs by vertical, by client, by goal, I mean, especially, branding, direct response, it's, kind of as you move down the funnel, it's, I would say, there's so many different factors that play a role in deciding, making those decisions. I would say, the biggest, um, one of the biggest things when it comes to kind of targeting, especially as the industry changes, is what do we know about consumers? Like how beyond the fact of like where are we in the funnel? What kind of campaign are we going? Are we going lower funnel campaign, upper funnel campaign? Beyond that, we really think about how do we find the right consumers? How do we target them? How do we identify them? And that now that's even more confusing than it used to be, I would say. We went all in on cookies, and now we're scaling back, and now the industry is scaling back, and they're not entirely gone. They don't plan on being entirely gone probably ever at this point, because Google has made that announcement where they say, that they're not going to deprecate cookies. They're going to leave it to the consumer to decide. And we've seen consumers historically, we have seen consumers opt out of cookies more, or opt out of being tracked more often than not. I think the benchmarks are kind of global benchmark is like a 20% opt-in rate. So like, that's the expectation I think we're headed towards, and with cookies, and once Google kind of puts us in place. But I think the biggest thing is like, what does that mean from an audience targeting perspective? We're gonna we have to now, and we're going to continue to have to find a balance between targeting via known identifiers. Targeting on a client site with first party data is very different than targeting out in the open web with known identifiers, or or finding people in the right context. Contextual targeting, all of those things are going to have to play a role. That's a balance, and that's one of those kind of, call it trial and error, or call it test and learn, things that you need to, especially when working with a new client, you need to test your way into of what is that ideal balance, what's the right proportion of, and also what's the scale of some of these things. I mean, a lot of the identifiers, are great, but like don't have the most, don't have the best scale at this point. They're still working on scale. So, what's the point of diminishing returns when you use an identity partner, and what is the cost of using an identity partner, and what does that do on your overall, ROI or ROAS or whatever, so it's testing and learning your way into that balance, and finding what is working, and then continually testing it, because things will change and things will evolve, and we'll have to kind of keep readjusting. But I think, that balance of like content or, audience targeting, it's all about, kind of using the available information we have and putting those tests into market, and really coming back with a good balance that we continue to iterate on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. So We talked about audience targeting. We talked about contextual targeting. I'm going to bring back that fourth C now, right? The idea of culture. And I think if you've met anybody at Sightly at a conference, heard anyone speak on a panel, been next to them at the bar ordering a drink, you probably know that we are huge believers that culture is a very big driving force in our industry, now more than ever. So for us, yes, like we kind of talked about before, we are a risk-averse industry, and naturally we have to be. But we're believers that culture can also represent opportunity to create meaningful, long-lasting brand-to-consumer relationships. That's why we think a lot about real-time marketing. We do talk about content. To your point, maybe that's almost like personalization, but at a more aggregate level about how you think about topics that are trending and how you can communicate with groups of like-minded consumers that are passionate about specific things and trends that are happening in our space and across culture as a whole. Is culture currently playing a role for Havas in how you think about advising clients when it comes to whether it's advertising, paid media decisions, but also broader marketing decisions or organic communication? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So culture may not be one of our three C's, but I'll throw another one of our acronyms at you. So we have something called CCBC, which is now hopefully I get this right: consumer, culture, business, and competitive. So it's when we're thinking about, like, in our kind of MX process, the first stage is intelligence, and it's all about gathering as much intelligence as we can about these four areas. And it's about who are our consumers, what is the business, what is the competitive, and what is the culture? What is the culture around this brand, and what is the culture in the market that we're in? So it's the brand's culture, it's the market, it's the audience, so it's all about kind of cultural relevance and what can we learn about culture. And so it is a huge part of what we are doing when we do our intelligence phase, is what can we learn about culture. And I think it's critically important, as you said, in all forms of media. But there's also, we have a new, not new, but like sort of like CSA, we launched another group within Havas probably about 2 years ago, called Havas Play, and it is focused on it's sort of content, but not the way we're talking. We're talking about it in terms of like experiential events, sponsorships, brand adjacency to different, sometimes it can go into influencers, it can go into, but when we think about culture, especially that group is constantly thinking about culture and cultural relevance of the brand that we're working with. And in their case, what kinds of events or things do they want to be associated with, and what does it make the most sense to surround as a brand? So that could be sporting events, it could be music festivals, it could be entertainment, it could be and placement into pop culture and movies and shows and things like that. So how do we integrate our brands better into culture is a huge part of what Havas Play does. And in order to do that, you really have to understand culture. You have to have a really strong perspective on it. And I think that's, one of the places where we, you guys and us were like super aligned on that, because it's critical that if you have to be culturally relevant. It just looks weird if you're like so far out of left field.
Right? You
Yeah.
have public speed too.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. Like you have to speed to market, you have to be on top of things. I mean, everyone talks about that sort of, what was it, the Oreo Super Bowl a bunch of years ago, and speed and things like that. But it also, it was fun, it was culturally relevant, like it was just sort of, everyone talks about, Super Bowl and snacking, like all of those things are very relevant, and are tapped into sort of cultural behavior. So absolutely, it's a huge part of what we think of when we're planning, not just some of the fun, I joke around about like, drone shows and sponsorships and things like that, but also when we are thinking about core media executions.
Yeah, that's cool. It's exciting, and like you said, we're very much aligned in that thinking. But I think it's also exciting for us to hear the industry think more and more that way. For us, that thought process probably started like 4 or 5 years ago. At this point, where we said something's changing. Like there's a shift happening with consumers, with expectations, with how everything is sort of intersecting. And to your point, we need to be future ready, right? And how do we evolve our solutions so that when the industry is ready to talk about it more, we are ready to have a solution that really works in that space to help brands and agencies navigate it all. So it's very exciting for us to hear this as a topic become more and more important to the space and the industry and partners that we work with so that we can really work together to navigate those challenges, but also those opportunities together.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Next up, we are going to pick an ice cream.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Vanilla, matcha, strawberry, orange and vanilla, lemon and lavender, chocolate.
I was really looking for like a mint chocolate chip or like a cookies and cream.
Yeah.
Um, this is going to be a process of elimination. No matcha, no strawberry. What was it? Mocha something? Coffee?
There's a chocolate,
Chocolate. Okay.
lemon and lavender,
No.
orange and vanilla, or vanilla.
I'm going chocolate. I'm going straight chocolate.
I will say cookies and cream is notably absent.
Cookies and cream, mint chocolate chip. Come on. It's like they're just trying, they're reaching. BuzzFeed.
I'll send the feedback after.
Exactly.
All right. We're actually going to do 2 in a row. What about
a what?
cupcake?
A cupcake. Okay.
Red velvet, mint chocolate. Oh, I don't know if you prefer that in an ice cream, but it's available to you in a cupcake now. Red velvet, mint chocolate, chocolate hazelnut, coffee, lemon, or funfetti.
Funfetti.
I was gonna
Funfetti.
answer it for you, to be honest, but I wanted to
Exactly.
compare a shot. But you passed.
You've learned my preferences now.
Exactly. We're on the same page. It's funfetti or nothing for me.
I essentially have as I'm thinking about this, I feel like I have the taste buds of a toddler.
Same. When I saw matcha listed as ice cream, I was like, that doesn't make sense. I'm with you. All right. So maybe rounding out some of our last questions here, we have talked a lot about the smart thinking, the rigor and discipline that goes into some of the decision making, test and learn frameworks, tools, all that great stuff, which is all really important, right? When we're doing work on behalf of our clients. But there is something I'm interested to get your take on, which is what about when a brand is presented with an opportunity? We just talked about culture. We just talked about how quickly things move. You can't always be prepared for an opportunity that comes your way. What happens when that type of opportunity is presented, but maybe there isn't the chance to have the perfect measurement framework, the perfect tracking, whether that's because, solutions just aren't there yet, or it's a time factor where you can't move quickly enough to have all of those steps perfectly laid out. How much room is there to hold hands?
I know where you're going with this.
Right? Like, do we just go for it? Is there ever a time where we just go for it? Or do we always really need a very calculated plan of action and to know that we're going to be able to have the exact measurement on the other side?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's always value in rigor, but we recognize that, that's not always feasible. It's not always possible. We work with clients all the time who, go back to the Oreo example. If that had to go through a measurement framework before they sent it out, it wouldn't happen. And that would have been a missed opportunity. So of course, we are not so rigid that we believe that, we need to, that we sacrifice, amazing work in the face of measurement. We're also talked about agility and flexibility before. We're flexible enough to find a way after the fact of measuring success. Now, it may not be the direct link between sales and social post. It may not be perfect. It may not be exactly how we measure all of our other campaigns. It may be it may be based on proxy metrics. It may, it may be slightly different. I guess that's the way of thinking about it. We may do things a little bit differently, and people have to, I think we and our clients have to recognize from the beginning. We'll say, hey, listen, we don't have time to set up a measurement plan. We don't have time to track this. So we're all going to have to agree that we're going to measure this one a little bit differently. And it may not flow directly into our reporting dashboard and line up nicely along with all of our other ones. Doesn't mean it's not worth doing. And that's, I think that's I think ultimately my personal opinion is, as long as everybody is aligned from the start, then we're good. As long as we're all aligned that some of the things may not be possible, but we'll work on other ways of tracking. We'll work on other ways of measuring success. Maybe it's a survey a brand lift survey that we launch after the fact. Who knows? But the reality is that measurement shouldn't stop people from doing work. It should be a way that we think about how to look at success. It's not always going to be the most consistent, but it should never be a barrier. It should always be, an enhancement. Yes, there's a process that we would love to follow, but that, it's not a utopia. We're not blind to the fact that things need to move at a certain pace, and we need to move along with them. And sometimes we'll be able to do that from the start, and sometimes it'll be after the fact. And as long as we're all aligned going into it and everybody's expectations are aligned going into it, then measurement should never act as a barrier to doing great work.
Yeah, that's so true. And the word aligned there, it really resonates, right? Because we talked a little bit earlier about the fact that sometimes it takes upfront work to get aligned, so that when something further downstream becomes an opportunity, you have a general sense of whether this maybe conflicts with a non-negotiable for a brand, or whether it's something where there's a little bit more space to play around it and get creative so that you're ready to move quicker and to keep up, and to your point, not stifle the work and the opportunity that's there, because sometimes great marketing might just be great marketing, and maybe that's okay.
Exactly. I mean, like I can, there are so many pieces of advertising marketing that I remember, and I don't remotely think about how it was measured or how was it successful in driving me. It's just really good work. And that's okay. That's part of what we love. That's part of why we do this work, is because it's really fun.
Oh, I couldn't ask for a better note to end on. With that, we will have you choose your favorite drink to go along with your desserts. Milk,
Yeah.
smoothie, milkshake, tea, coffee, or water.
I mean, a milkshake is a dessert in and of itself, so I'm just going to add that to the list.
It's like a freebie at that point.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's just good business sense right there.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, we are going to tally up your results.
All right, drum roll.
Yeah, we're going to let you know very soon. We're going to get there. So we're crunching the numbers, like I said, as we speak. While we run that very statistically confident analysis, tell us a little bit. Obviously, if people want to learn more about you, they can find you at Jamie Seltzer on LinkedIn. What about your team more broadly? Are you producing any type of, obviously day-to-day, your focus as client work, but are you producing any kind of thought leadership pieces, releasing any, research across the industry that people should be aware of?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are, I would definitely say follow the LinkedIn channel. So there's a CSA LinkedIn page that you should follow, because we're constantly putting out work, and it's not just global work. So yes, I'm currently right after this, I'm going to start working on, we're doing our 2025 trends, which is an amalgamation of ideas and opinions from around the world, from our teams around the world, which is very exciting. We did one in 2020. We did one for 24. Now we're working on one for 25. That's up there. But we're also constantly highlighting really great work from around the markets, thought leadership pieces from around the world, panels and presentations that we're doing. Our friends in Germany just presented at a Google presentation with our Telefonica clients. So there's always really interesting work and showcasing really great work on our CSA LinkedIn page. And then you can always find news and updates on our website as well, that we can share out. It's nested as part of the overall Havas Media website, that you can find us there as well. Or you can always just find me on LinkedIn and reach out and ask and see what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will want to hear more. So that's a great way for them to continue to follow the great work that you and your team are doing. Okay, drum roll.
Yes, drum roll.
You are mashed potatoes. It's a good one.
I love mashed potatoes. I'm a big fan. I don't know if that says I'm boring, but
on the contrary, I have a description. I'm ready to go.
Oh, okay.
You're probably really popular and you're always the coolest person in the room. People just love being around you, which from my experience over the last little bit of time we've spent together, it checks out.
I love it. Well, I'm going to embrace my inner mashed potatoes now. I'm very excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with me and with our listeners. It was really great to learn a little bit more about you, about your team, and the great work that you're doing. And we're excited to continue the conversation in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I love watching what Siley's doing and how you guys are growing and pushing forward. So thank you again for having me.
Hi, I'm Hannah, one of the producers for Siley's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone that would make a great fit, you could fill out the form at siley.com/podcast. We hope you have a great day.